Hello, and welcome back to the Chef Michael podcast. This is your host, Chef Michael. Guys, I can't even be that serious. Welcome back. I'm super happy to have you here listening or watching this podcast. As you know, this is the talk where I get to dive in a little bit deeper into what's happening in the food world, the keto community, and kind of the good, bad, and the ugly of what's happening around us. And you guys may already know me from my recipes, but I was hoping this podcast, we could kind of get into some deeper conversations. So welcome. And if you want more information about this podcast, go to chefmichael.com/podcast. And that's chef-michael, chef-michael.com/podcast for more information. And then of course, if you want to help support the podcast and keep the lights on, go to patreon.com/chefmichael. And I make these sort of post-episode reflections where I talk about what my guest just said and kind of reflect on that and give you some of my own thoughts on what we talked about. So join me for those bonus episodes and support the podcast by going to patreon.com/chefmichael. Lastly, I have to thank our sponsor, Redmond Real Salt, for providing support for this podcast. Now, this sponsorship works so well for me because I genuinely use their products every single day in my kitchen, both for myself and my recipes. It tastes awesome. But more importantly, it is packed with like 65 trace minerals. It's made from a Jurassic era dried up seabed in Utah. And it's just like mined right out of the ground. And it's packed with tons and tons of those trace minerals and electrolytes, which are so important on a ketogenic diet. So grab yourself a bag at your local grocery store or go to redmond.life. That's redmond.life and use the discount code Chef Michael at checkout for 15% off, which is pretty cool. And they have some other stuff also beyond just salts. I use their toothpaste. They're just like a really cool company. So definitely check out redmond.life. Anyway, we got a cool guest today. He's a friend of mine, was become a friend of mine through this keto community, but he's an awesome dude. He self-describes himself as the weird keto dad, but he's just, I don't even know how to describe him. He's just an awesome guy, and I'm so lucky to know him. He's got an amazing YouTube channel and an awesome podcast. I've been on his podcast a couple of times, which has kind of inspired me to do this. So we'll kind of see where the conversation goes today. You know, I never really have an agenda going into it and just love to see organically what happens, but I'm very excited to introduce our guest, Aaron Duprey.
How are you? It's been a crazy week, man.
It's been a crazy week. Man, Texas is wild, but thanks for being patient with me.
Of course. I didn't know if you got my, like, as soon as it happened, I was like, oh man, there's no way we're doing this thing that we have scheduled to do. I better like just see what's going on. And you didn't reply. So I was like, the dude is busy, like trucking people around.
I mean, the cell towers were down. It was like going back a few hundred years within a few hours. It was nuts. But I actually like, oh, go.
No, I was actually talking with Frank about it the other day. We were talking about you and how you were, doing the thing, volunteering and like driving people around. And Texas is not set up like, being from the Northeast, what it's all about.
Yeah.
But Texas was just not prepared, man.
No, it's funny because I hate my pickup truck. I like have no use for it. It was pretty valuable. Do you hear all that noise?
I'm sorry. Yeah, that was my Keurig.
Okay. No, it's fine. I should have had a coffee before this. I was just making sure I'm not crazy. I'm like, am I in a stream or something? Like a river going by?
Right. Why do I hear a 28.8 baud modem right now?
Right. And it's so funny because I can't wait to get rid of my pickup truck because it's like, it's funny. Like I used it a lot in Pittsburgh, especially when I was doing some house renovating. Mm-hmm. Now working from home, it's useless to me because I can't even like put groceries in the back 3/4 of the year because they'll fry. It's a black pickup truck. And so like, to me, it's this massive waste of gas and size.
Yeah.
But it saved our ass this last week. Like having
I can imagine.
It saved our ass. And it's like, man, I was so grateful to have it. It's just funny how like when your life takes some twists and turns, I don't know, it all just shifts around a lot, right? Like now I'm like, man, maybe I should just like at least have something with 4-wheel drive. Like, I don't know. It's just wild.
We have the same automotive questions every now and then. Like it's been a year now that we have basically not used one of our cars. And we're like, why are we paying for this thing that's just kind of sitting in our driveway?
I know.
I don't know.
I don't know. It's like we want them when we need them.
Yeah.
That's why.
For sure.
But yeah, no, it was a wild week. It was really cool though, seeing so much support, coming through from people.
Yeah.
I mean, not just to me, but in general, like people from around the country. It was funny. The first day or so when everything was blacking out and like all these people were like responding to my stories from like Canada and Buffalo and stuff and being like, ha ha, we get this every day.
That's the thing. Like people think it's funny, but like it's not funny. They did it first, but then everybody understood like the next day that this was like actually a humanitarian crisis in essence. But it did seem almost comical. And the reason it's comical is because it's almost unfathomable that we're this unprepared here. Yeah.
At least from like a systematic level. Like there's just no infrastructure for snow here. And yeah, I guess it's a once in 50 year or once in 70 year storm or whatever they call it. But I don't know if we can say that anymore. The climate is changing. I'm starting the podcast with controversy. The climate is warming. It's definitely, I think we're seeing a lot more dramatic weather patterns around the world. And so I think this is going to be the new normal. So these companies better figure it out.
Right.
This isn't going to work anymore.
I think at the very least, you'll have sort of infrastructure in place going forward where grocery stores won't look like they did in your stories over the first, 48 hours or so, just like a ghost town.
It was freaky,
but I'm glad to see that everything's kind of getting back to normal there.
Yeah, I had to go to, I went to our local grocery store yesterday, didn't find anything. I went to Walmart thinking, Walmart's got to have the infrastructure to bring groceries in, and they didn't have anything. But of course, my true heart, Aldi, came through.
Of course.
I should have just started there, but it's the smallest grocery store like near me. So in my mind, I'm thinking like, there's no way that like Aldi would be the one that would be fully stocked. In my mind, it just didn't make sense to me.
Right.
So I went there last and actually it was like, they had everything, meat. I mean, there's some things obviously out from panic buying, but it was generally stocked.
Yeah. You know what? That may have influenced me because I had to make a bunch of stops yesterday. I was out and about and I was like, I'm hitting Aldi. I usually don't hit Aldi. I'm confused by the whole quarter for a cart exchange thing. I only go there when I only have 2 or 3 things to get that I can carry with my hands. Cause I don't know if I'm just, I'm intimidated by the whole system. I don't understand what the hell is happening.
Oh, it's so good though. Their products are so good and so cheap. I mean, for me, when it comes down to like a business thing, obviously food for me is now my career. It's my business. So I think about it like a restaurant, right? Like I'm looking at food costs, COGS, all these kind of like, business thinking around groceries. And a lot of families, think this way too, of course, like how do we save money on groceries? But I'm at the grocery store every day. So what may seem like a small thing, like 15 cents off of a stick of butter, like for a family could mean a lot over the course of the year for me. So thinking about grocery cost is big, and I've studied it and there's nothing close. Like even Costco in bulk is not close to the regular prices at Aldi. This podcast sponsored by Aldi. No, it should be. It should
Come
be.
at Michael, Aldi.
My life should be, because I'm literally there every day. I spend thousands of dollars at Aldi. It's really wild.
Nice.
But
I'm so happy too that you pronounce it properly. Like so many people say Aldi's. Like there's no Aldi's. It's Aldi.
There's no S.
Guys, come on.
That's funny. Yeah, that's true. A lot of people do. I don't know. I never learned it as I just learned it as Aldi. It is funny though. Like, I get these funny messages on Instagram of people being like, I want to thank you for showing that like cheap food, you could be a fancy chef and make food from Aldi or something. I think it's so funny because I really don't think about it that way. Like, it to me, it's just business. Like I said, restaurants do this and it's just funny. And I happen to live, maybe it's not an accident, but I happen to live like really close to the only Aldi in Austin.
Nice.
And so I take full advantage.
Hey, gotta do it.
For $146 yesterday, I stocked my fridge with days and days worth of meat and produce and like basics.
So well organized in there. Like your refrigerator puts mine to shame. Like you had everything like vegetables here, fresh meats here,
it helps.
here.
Okay, so yes and no. I mean, that is how I structure my fridge all the time anyway. It doesn't always look that neat only because it was empty. So therefore I put it back at one move. However, that is a very, again, it's like, it's business, right? Like in the sense that operationally, when I'm moving in the kitchen, I just need to know where things are.
Yeah.
And restaurant kitchens kind of operate that way. You always have the raw meat on the bottom shelf. It's actually it's a code thing when you get into food safety, because if it leaks or drips, you never put raw produce under raw meat. If the meat were to drip, yada, yada, yada. So
we have a meat tray that is on the top shelf of our refrigerator. Like a big dish with a huge lip to it. So like I do get ground beef every now and then. And if I leave it there for more than a couple of days and I pick it up, there's like a pool underneath it. I'm like, oh man, maybe this should be a little bit lower in the fridge.
yeah, for sure. It definitely, I don't know, things ooze in the food, in the pantry or in the fridge. So
episode title.
Yeah.
Things ooze.
Things ooze. That's never usually a good thing. Things oozing.
Let's come up with something else.
Well, so Aldi, we've talked about that. I guess that's really where I live my life. No, but I wanna first share who you are a little bit.
Sure.
I've been lucky enough to be on your podcast and YouTube channel a couple times. I may little flex here. I think I was your first two-time guest.
First and only to this point.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It's slow going for me. It's every 2 weeks. There's a lot of production that happens. So it's like, I don't churn them out every week. It takes me like it's a bi-weekly thing. So now
let's dive into that topic. Cause I am, okay. So you're actually, I think, one of two people that really inspired me to do this, first of all. And I don't know if you know that yet. I called you on your cell phone maybe 2 months ago and basically said, where do I even start? You kind of like gave me a few pointers and we chatted about this a little bit. I wanted to find a way to bring people into these discussions outside of Instagram, which is generally where I live in terms of my like public presence or whatever. And get a little bit deeper, because sometimes I feel like, no shade, but Instagram's got a very particular set of ethos or style in terms of people generally including myself, showing kind of the best of themselves.
Right.
And I am not a perfect person with pretty photos all the time. And so I thought creating a space where we could dive in a little bit deeper would be really fun. And you really inspired me to do that. So I thank you for that and for your advice. But I want to go back to what you just said, which is that there is a lot of production that goes into this. So as a YouTuber and a podcaster, maybe you could speak to that a little bit, because I maybe a little bit naively, if that's not a word, was like, a podcast won't be too complicated. I'll set up a camera and bring on some guests. It has consumed my life for the past 30 days. The planning, the execution, the equipment, the production, the post-production, and then getting through, obviously, scheduling and posting these products, and then, of course, managing the response and sort of marketing it. I maybe was a little naive in how much work this is, and I'm glad. It's pushing me. I'm learning a ton. I'm having a blast. I'm talking to awesome people. But it is a ton of work. So as somebody who has made a ton of YouTube content and has done really well with video and YouTube, talk to me about your process. How do you manage? I guess you said it a little bit, once every 2 weeks you do an episode, but how do you manage this?
Well, that's a great question. Firstly, I'm very flattered to be, mentioned as an inspiration. That seems crazy to me, but it's very kind of you. I have, as I've told a few people, a little bit of an unfair advantage. Editing video has been my career since 1997. So I know my way around this kind of area. And YouTube, when it came out, it was like, I don't know, 2006 maybe, when it sort of blew up a little bit. And I was like, ooh, that's something that I could do. I have the skill set to like make videos and put them on YouTube. I just don't know what I would even talk about. Like I don't have anything that really is speaking to me until sort of keto came along, and it was like, ooh, this is like, here's something that's really changed my life a lot, keto, and here's the skills I have with YouTube. So I started that, was
They
inspired by,
merged.
yeah, they did merge. There was a lot of the Venn diagram sort of came into focus. But, I just looked up keto on YouTube. I found Sahil's channel, Headbanger's Kitchen, Keto Connect, Wes from High Flute and Low Carb were all huge inspirations when I started. And I was like, yeah, I can make some videos and do this. This is in my wheelhouse. So I started out. It was 2017.
1917.
19. Oh my God. It was 1917.
The first YouTuber in history.
I mean, I am old, but not quite that old. But I did a few videos about, losing a little bit of the weight. I didn't start when I started my keto journey, which I wish I had, to have that documentation of here's me at 280 pounds.
Same.
Watch me lose weight.
I don't have a true before picture.
Yeah, I was ashamed to take pictures of myself when I was at my heaviest. Same. I have a 100%. Handful. Yep. So 100%. I started like 3/4 of the way through ultimately what was my total weight loss. I remember starting and I was around 225 pounds. I then lost another 10 or so. But in the beginning, it was sort of like, here's a few recipes that I've made that helped me. Here's like some boxes that I ordered that I'll unbox and show. And I was able to churn out one a week. And it continued, and I did some vlogs. I did like full day of eating type stuff. And I reached out to Keto Connect and I was like, hey, what's your advice on like moving forward? And do you have any tips for me? And they were like, well, we're doing this thing where we're going to showcase a few channels. Do you want to be one of them? And I was like, exploding on the inside. Cool. At this point, they were like, I don't know, 100,000, 150,000 subscribers.
I mean, they're like the OGs.
They are. So I was like, oh my God, tell me what you want from me and I will do it. And they're like, yeah, just make like a 30-second little thing about your channel. We're going to do, it was in the middle of Matt's, he was doing like this 4,000 calories a day challenge. And they were trying to come up with content to keep this thing going. And one of them was reading mean YouTube comments. So they did a whole video where they talked about mean YouTube comments, and then they highlighted a few channels. Mine was one, Fat Fueled Family, Danny and Mauro Vega.
Right.
Keto
We're going to be on the
Savage.
podcast as well.
Oh, nice. Keto Savage, Robert Sykes, and Kayla Keto, who I don't know what has happened to Kayla. She has disappeared off the face of the planet. I don't know where she is. Come back, Kayla. We miss you.
Come back.
But yeah, I've told this story a couple times, but I was at work editing my 9-to-5 job, and I had notifications on whenever someone would subscribe to my YouTube channel. Like at the time I had, I don't know, 100 and like my mom was watching, and that was kind of it. Right. So anytime I got a new subscriber, I was very excited. And they dropped the video featuring the 4 channels, and my computer was going crazy. Like I think I got over 1,000 subscribers in like 10 minutes. I had to like silence the notifications. I was like freaking out. So that was huge. That was like kind of, they gave me a huge, boost. And I'm so thankful to them for a lot of things, including that. So I just kept on going, doing my thing. My wife, Sarah, was hesitant to start keto when I did. It seemed crazy to her.
Well, and you can kind of see if you've watched your channel, you can see her ebb and flow. Like she comes in and does content now, but it wasn't always like that. Like
right. Yeah. It used to be sort of, this is your thing. Go nuts. But you're not going to be the only one losing weight. Like I'm going to do Weight Watchers again, which she did and had great success with it. She dropped 70 pounds herself. But then by mid 2018, she started asking me like, if I were to start keto, like what would I do? And I was like, I tried not to push her from the very beginning. Right. Like, I don't want to push you into this, but if you come to me, I will, it's on. So we made a deal, and the deal was that she would do keto with me on the condition that I made everything that went into her mouth. Like if I made all the food, made all the meals, she would do it.
So it was on you.
It was on me, and I was happy to do it. Like it gave me so much joy. Like I was so happy.
Yeah, of course.
And so that was fun. That was mid 2018. We did a weekly check-in show together that lasted for over a year. Like I think we did 70 something episodes of that, where we just come on Sunday mornings and just like talk about what we ate, talk about our week, talk about whatever. And then it was late last year, 2 years ago, 2019. I started thinking about doing a podcast, and wasn't quite sure how to go about it. Like video had always been my thing. Um, Podcasting was something I'd never done, and it wasn't actually something that I decided for myself. Like my pal Brandon Clark, he works with Robert in Arkansas. He's the product manager for Keto down there. He was
Got
like,
it.
"Hey,
Okay.
would you consider chatting about my story on your channel?" I was like, "Oh my god, that'd be awesome." So I had him on. We set this thing up where we each record. I knew he had Robert's camera, so I was like, "Just set up Robert's camera. I'll set up my camera. We'll connect via Skype. We'll each record ourselves, and then you can send me the files, and I'll edit it together." And that was the
Sure.
first episode of what has become my podcast, Combos, which is YouTube initially, and then I repurposed the audio for an audio
Right.
podcast. So I'm kind of like cannibalizing myself a little bit on both platforms, but it's been working out. I'm
You kind of
30
have to
something
though,
episodes
right?
in.
Like we
Yeah,
have to
yeah,
be cross-platform. I mean, it
yeah.
just is what it is.
It started out, and I was like, I didn't launch the audio podcast right away. I sort of like, let's see how it goes with putting these together. What can I sustain if I do this? So it was. I recorded a few episodes up in the beginning. Keto Connect was kind enough to do one. Sahil did one. I had like 6 or 7 episodes kind of in the can and ready to go. And I put them out every 2 weeks, which seemed to be sustainable for me.
Right.
That seemed to be the sweet spot for me. And then once I got 12 episodes in, I was like, okay, let's put this out as an audio podcast. So I just kind of repurposed the audio, put little bookends on either side of it for the audio podcast version that were different from the YouTube version, and launched the podcast after I had like 10 or 12 episodes. And so now every time I record one, I do the video version first. That's how it starts, and then I get that all put together. Then I just take the audio, modify it a touch for the audio podcast feed, and that's what it is. And it's
That's curious though.
yeah,
In the beginning, you made 2 different versions, or just subtle like editing things?
it was really just the body of the whole thing was the same. Like
Okay,
the only thing that changed in the audio version was like sort of the intro and the outro. Like I would just
got
come
it.
on and talk a little bit in
Sure.
the beginning, talk a little bit after I wrap things up at the end. But the whole middle, the whole body of it was exactly the same.
Okay,
You know.
kind of just change the intro, the teaser, or whatever it would be.
Yeah, yeah. And I wanted to make room
That's
because
interesting.
I have had some very generous companies reach out and say, hey, we would be interested in like throwing an ad in there. So the audio version, I try to there's like I can put in an ad break here to put in a commercial
Right.
for this company that
Right.
I
Right.
dig.
Right.
So that's really the
It's
only
funny
version,
though.
the difference.
It's funny hearing you talk because I was sort of the opposite. Like video anything to me is overwhelming. And if I didn't have my amazing producer, Dan, who's been really like pushing me, he really wanted to do the video thing, even though it's more work for him as the producer and
Yeah,
editor. And like, because of our ability to bring it to YouTube and to show people these conversations and people who want to kind of feel like they want to know us and see us.
hmm
I get that. But if it were up to me and if I was by myself and did not have like you said it best in the beginning, you have a little bit of a hack in that you're an editor by trade.
right, right,
That being said, I don't buy that is a total solution, in that there's so much more that goes into this than just the editing. So while I'm sure that helps, it's not all of it. Like you're still doing a lot of other stuff. You're wearing a lot of
hmm
other hats as well.
right,
But I feel like the audio is so much easier. And had I not had somebody willing to step in and help me with the video and help me get this beautiful camera set up, I would never have known how to do this on my
right,
own, to get this like cool visual effect and all this stuff.
right.
This is not my thing. So there's a lot more, I guess what I'd say. I'm trying to give you some credit. I'm just not doing a good
Oh,
job.
thank
But
you.
I think you're doing a great job, even outside of what your trade is. That being said, I get you on the sort of frequency. And one of the things that I went to with an understanding, especially with how much I work on my other projects, was there's no way that on a weekly running basis, I'm going to be able to put out an episode.
Right.
So what I'm doing here, which listeners right now wouldn't necessarily know, so I'm kind of revealing the truth behind what happens here, is I'm treating this like a TV show, in that I've pre-filmed all of the first 20 episodes in 30 days, which is several days.
Wow.
Have 2 or 3 recordings. I have another recording with somebody else after this. And we're kind of treating it like a TV show. We're filming all 20 episodes. Then they're all going to post-production. And then we'll basically just schedule to release them over 20 weeks and drip them out. And that way, I got 30 tough days here ahead of me where I'm doing recipes and everything else that I'm doing, as well as sitting here and making sure my hair doesn't look too disastrous and getting on camera. Because
you should have seen this thing like 20 minutes ago, man. It was
exactly. I'm a little bit of a diva. Like after you've been on reality TV, you come home different. But I can't imagine the thought of constantly doing this in the middle of every week, because I think that would be a big drain. And so then I'll have 20 weeks, which is what, 4.5 months or something, where I can then do this all over again and pre-film probably like the latter 2 months. I'll probably take 2 months off, focus back on recipe writing, and then the latter 2 months do another production run and kind of treat it like a season 2. That is not probably the easiest way of handling it on anybody, mentally or physically, on me or Dan, who's editing and producing this. But it just makes the most sense right now. But unfortunately, like I'm going to take 20 of these video files, plus we're doing bonus episodes on Patreon that are kind of just me talking shit about you after the episode.
Oh, sweet. I can't wait.
And of course not. I mean, I love you, man. But kind of doing like these little reflections after as bonus episodes. And so we're really looking at 40 pieces of content. And then when you double that for the audio only version, it's a heavy project.
It's a heavy lift. Yeah. I mean, I think you're doing it really smart. That's a really smart way to do it. I wish that I had because I do get in a panic. Like if it gets to be like, okay, I've put out an episode, I got nothing coming out in 2 weeks. Like I need to reach out to someone and see if they can record. Yeah. Oh my God, please let them be able to record.
Yeah.
I do run into that a couple times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of always be thinking about it. However, because I had to plan 20 episodes before the 30-day production run, it took me 30 days to write the episodes and figure out who I wanted to bring in. I had to get 20 people to agree to be here, 20 crazy people who are willing to spend an hour or two with me. It's been a big undertaking. You know, it's like a mini, not that it's anything close, but it's like a mini tiny TV show.
Yeah.
That takes a lot of thought and planning. And there's just a lot more that goes into this that people, than I really appreciated. And so now that I've seen behind the curtain, I have that much more respect for you, who's put out hundreds of video content pieces. I just like, it blows my mind that I'm struggling with 20.
Hey, I mean, it's amazing. I will say, going back a little bit to like the video and audio together, the bigger reason I was excited to put out the audio version is I feel like it can be kind of a big ask for people to sit down and watch a conversation for like an hour. Podcasts are sort of like a passive experience traditionally, where you're doing something else. You know, you're washing the dishes, you're going to the grocery store, you can listen. So I wanted to make sure that the videos I did put out were not just sort of two people on a split screen talking. I wanted to try to put in, images and B-roll and like dress it up a little bit so there was some quality there.
A little dynamic experience.
Just have people have it be worth people's time, I guess is the thing. That's something I tend to worry about a lot. I was like, are people falling asleep during this?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I kind of agree with you in the sense that that's why I said earlier, if it were just me, I would only do an audio version. But there's people that really love YouTube podcasts. And like, that's awesome. I still think I will say that, and we'll see in the comments, but I do feel like a lot of people who watch on YouTube, it's still passive. Like it's still on in the background on another tab on their computer, or I certainly don't see a lot of people just staring at the screen, staring at us right now.
Arms folded.
I mean, if you are, thank you. But I agree with you in that trying to get some dynamics is awesome. But at the end of the day, it's a conversation. There's, it is what it is.
Yep.
It is what it is.
I will say I did change the time that I released it based on what I thought. Like, I figured people wake up in bed maybe in the morning and they tune in more. Like, it's more easily done at 6:30 a.m. than like 10:30 a.m. when their day's already started and they're in the middle of doing whatever they're doing. So I put out stuff early now. I used to be 10:30 a.m. is my time. That's when I'm going to drop stuff, so people will know it's 10:30. And I'm like, I think I'm shooting myself in the foot. Let's put it out earlier so people can watch it as soon as they want.
Yeah, a lot of people like have these morning workout routines and love putting on a podcast.
Yeah.
It's definitely interesting, the process that I'm taking too. And I'll play with this as, it's funny, we're talking about it, but we're like talking about the thing we're in right now.
Right.
It's sort of meta, but I don't even know at this point the order of the episodes. So like, I don't know right now if I'm talking to you in episode 10,
my episode
20.
30. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I don't know, because I'm kind of like excited to record it all, see the finished episodes, and then kind of like, excuse me, like
sequence it.
Write the album.
It, right?
It's like an album, right?
It's
like,
album sequencing. That's exactly
you
what it
want
is.
a couple heavy hitters in the front, but you also want some bangers at the end of the album.
Come
too,
on,
right? So
track
it's like
3. I want track 3. That's where the magic is. That's the best track right there.
So it's kind of fun. I'm just sort of rolling with this. I'm sure season 2, as I'm calling it, I'm sure I'll adjust my process pretty heavily by season 2. I'll learn from this. But I think it's cool just that I'm in it,
it's great.
I'm in it. I mentioned, the Vegas who are coming up for an episode, but like, I don't know if our guests have already heard them or not right now.
Right.
I'm trying to get Mega and Matt there. We've discussed it, and I can't say, and I won't know if I've got them or not at this point as a record, which is funny because like, if everything goes well, you may have already heard their episode.
Exactly.
If it doesn't, let's pray I can get them on season 2, because they're the first cookbook I bought when I turned keto. I, as a consumer, looked up to them a lot early on. And so it's sort of funny now that just the fact that they're even talking in discussion with their people. My people are talking to their people. That's all.
Wow,
that's how close I am.
You guys have people. You're big time when you got people. I will say, I happened to have them on when their second cookbook came out, and Matt was asking me, or they both asked me, like, which one is your favorite? And I was like, well, this new one is cool, but I have a soft spot for that first one because I went through it when Sarah started. That's when that first book came out. So I made everything in there, and it's all beaten up and like stained, and like it's a badge of honor that's my favorite one.
I think if I remember, the recipe that like shocked me at the time when I was like in my keto journey was the death by chocolate. Is that, am I right? Was that in that book?
I don't know that I ever made
by
that.
Chocolate cake?
It likely is. Yeah.
It was like the one that I was like, oh, I can do keto. This will work for me. Yeah. It was one of my first Instagram posts now, which I think is long archived because it's like, that's a whole other discussion. Right. Early content is so typically bad. I talked about that in a previous episode. It's sort of embarrassing, like our first videos and our first posts.
I tell you, man, even as someone who had done it for 2 decades prior to starting, my first few videos are like, oh God, what was I doing? What was I doing?
Yeah. Well, so I was talking about with another guest in another episode that basically it was kind of about, and again, I don't know if this is a future or a past episode right now, which is kind of funny, but it was basically about like, if you want to be a blogger or a recipe developer, like how do you start? Because it feels so overwhelming when you see the people you watch. Like when I started keto, I watched Mega and Matt at Keto Connect, who were already established. Right. And so when I started, I never saw myself or this future me happening at all. That was before MasterChef. That was before anything. That wasn't even on my radar. And so when you think about going from 0 to Keto Connect, it's like, no way. But the truth is, you just got to start. It wasn't until I just started throwing recipes up or you making videos or whatever. We just got to start. If the content sucks, you can always archive it if it's that embarrassing. Boy. But
I mean, everyone starts at 0. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, something Gary Vee always says.
He does. There's actually a few outside of keto. There's a few YouTubers that have talked about this, and like, I think it's an important thing because we see the polish. Like we were talking about that with Instagram. We see the finished polish, but we don't see how many years go into getting to that polish.
Right. You know what else there is to it? I think that I remember when I look back at those early videos, I was like, oh God, what? Like, I don't know. There was this notion that you have to put on a show. Like, I think it felt like I'm putting on an act in these first videos. And the thing with YouTube is that people want to see you. Like if you're authentic and you're putting stuff out there that's authentic to you, that's what it is. People can see when you're trying to, like, I don't know, be more than what you really are, or be something, put on an act.
100%.
So that was what was going on. I think in the first few videos I put out, it was like, what am I even doing?
You're trying to create something rather than
That's
just
the
like
thing. I'm a
creating.
YouTuber now. I got to act like this, but
Right.
no,
Exactly.
people
No,
don't
and
care.
that goes, honestly, that goes way, that's all social media. That's all content creation. I feel that way pretty strongly.
hmm
You know, I can see that in other people. I've caught myself where like, you know, it's very important to just make sure you're yourself on social media because people can see through it, or
hmm
most people can.
Oh yeah.
And you're very much yourself. I love it. You self-describe yourself as like a weird keto dad, which I think is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it
And
is.
you sort of we sort of embrace our nerdier sides. We sort of embrace our quirks and our families and
hmm
the fun stuff that happens. I think you and your wife's dynamic is hilarious. You bring your teenage kids into it. Like, I think it's awesome, man. It's
We do
really
what we
cool.
can. We do what we can.
Yeah, it's great. That's really great. So I'm going to throw you off topic here for a second.
Sure. Yeah.
I was browsing Instagram before we started recording, and I saw you broke your skillet. What happened?
Okay. I received it as a gift 3 years ago. And it was it's a cheap one. Like when you look
Sure,
on
but
the
how do
bottom
you
of it,
break?
I dropped it. I dropped it like 6 months ago.
Okay. Got
So
it.
6 months ago, I dropped it, and I noticed this tiny little crack near the handle, and I ignored it. I was like, "It's fine. It's still working."
Got it.
But this morning, as I was washing it, holding it sideways, and just the weight of it, like suddenly I just had the handle in my hand. It just snapped off.
Oh God.
So I think I'm going to be doing a vlog tomorrow where I am on mission new cast iron. That's going to be the topic of the vlog.
Well, you put a poll on your question on your story, what to buy.
Mhm.
And so rather than answering in there, I'm going to answer you here. I'm a lodge man myself.
That is the consensus. Overwhelming consensus.
I mean, you know, there's obviously some very fancy brands of cast iron. I just don't personally see the point in it other than them looking kind of sexy. There's like these fancy hexagonal ones and stuff that are just really badass looking.
Yeah.
But honestly, like a lodge is going to last the rest of your life. It just does.
It's an overwhelming majority. The people who say, what are you doing getting anything other than a lodge? Like the one that broke was, it says Food Network on the bottom of it. It was super cheap.
Right. It's what
So
it's like, one of these things from like,
right. It's like an Amazon deal.
A license deal or whatever. Yeah.
So I'm excited to get a lodge.
They're cheap, you know, they're pretty cheap too. I always just say get the largest one, which I think is a 12-inch. It's heavier, but like, it's like, you can just do so much with it. Just like, I have like one of every size and they nest together, but it's like, I only ever use the big one. The rest
I use my large every day.
Oh, sorry.
Every day I'm using
Yeah. Every day. I pretty much use either my lodge or my big 12-inch nonstick skillet for like things that might be too sticky. I mean, you know, my lodge is pretty seasoned. But there's some days where I'm just like, I just want to scramble some eggs and not have to scrape anything after it.
Yeah.
So
that's the only thing that I use the nonstick for at all is eggs. And because of you, silicone spatula and or implement to mix it up. Never metal tongs. What are you doing? Stop it.
Never. Yeah. I think I yelled at you about that. Yeah. And again, they're so cheap. The one thing that I recently switched to, so I've always cleaned my cast irons with like just like this loose piece of chainmail. Yeah. But they now, Lodge makes them, but it's like a sponge of chainmail with a silicone skeleton inside.
Ooh, wow.
And it just gives you some leverage. Man, this I know this podcast is so exciting right now. We're talking about sponges, but it's
chainmail and sponges.
Chainmail, silicone skeletonized sponges is what we'll call them. But it was like, I don't know, $10 or $13. It gives you so much more leverage than the loose little square of chain. Yeah. I don't know if any of this makes any sense to anybody.
I think it does. Go
buy it. It is so nice because you know, but it doesn't absorb any soap because it's just a silicone skeleton.
Right.
Is what I'm.
Yeah, that's one thing I will say I've learned over the last 3 years with this. Maybe this was just like my practice skillet. Like I learned how to clean it. Never use soap.
There you go.
Just like use, scrape it out, scrape all the chunks out, wash it out with cold water, put it back on the
Dry it
on
off
the
on the
oven,
stove.
dry
And
it
that's
off,
it. A little bit of
a
oil.
little bit of avocado oil in the end, and wipe it around and walk away.
Yeah. I mean, the trick I think to cleaning all pans, not just cast iron, is clean them while they're warm. That to me is the only thing that I think people forget to do, because it's like you make the
If you
food,
leave
you
the
want
eggs
to eat
in
it.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I get it. You make the food, you want to eat it. But if you just like pull your food onto the plate and then immediately go to the sink, whatever you put in there rubs right out.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's just like, it takes 10 seconds.
Love it. Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool. Speaking of cast iron, I was gifted by my fiance's grandmother, her original cast iron that is probably, we don't even know. She got it passed down to her. And it is like, I wish I brought it with me to show you. Maybe we'll throw in some B-roll.
Yeah.
I don't know if we're going to be that fancy, but we'll throw in some. When I tell you it's like a mirrored finish, it's so beautiful. And it's so beautiful that I'm terrified to use it. And I've never cooked with it. It's just sitting on my shelf. Even though it's probably more indestructible than any other cast iron I own. It's just such a treasure to me that the idea of actually throwing it on the fire like stresses me out. So
I can understand that for sure.
As of right now, it's one of the more prized items in my culinary inventory.
Love it.
But
one of the other suggestions I got was go to an antique shop or go to like a garage sale. Find one that's like all beaten up, restore it. You'll love it. And they had me up until like restore. I don't know that I have it in me to restore a cast iron.
Yeah, all that rust does come out, but that does seem like a bit of a project.
Yeah, a little daunting. I got other stuff going on.
But when you do buy a new one, you're still going to want to season it again yourself, like the proper seasoning where you put it in the oven upside down.
Yep.
Go through that step once to kind of make it nonstick, and then it'll just kind of get better and better.
Love it. I love it. I totally will do that.
So what else should we talk about? Let's talk about, I saw you put out a new response, but I haven't listened to it because when you put it out, I hadn't watched episode 7, WandaVision.
Yeah, WandaVision.
You knew where I was going. I mean, obviously I'm obsessed with WandaVision, but I was like 2 days behind you. So I haven't listened to your response yet. This episode will probably not be out till like 2 months from now. So I assume WandaVision will be old news.
Yeah.
But what a weird and beautiful show.
I adore this show. And I've been talking about it with Gormy. Every week we do like a little Sunday night sort of IG live where we talk only about WandaVision. And it's so funny because people come in, they're like, what are these guys talking about? And like a few people will say, they're talking about WandaVision. Get out of here. Because we don't talk about anything keto related. It's just, hey, do you want to like just, even if no one watched us, I would want to talk to that guy. He knows so much more about
he's so cool.
The lore, like the comic versions of all these characters than I had a, passing knowledge of it when I was growing up. But he knows what's going on. But yeah, the show is amazing. I love that. I'm a huge MCU fan.
Sure.
It's a big part of my life. I grew up reading comic books. I was, a child of divorce, and I lived with my mom, and like my safe place was the box of comics on my bedroom floor. I would just dig through it all the time and just like read
you
comics.
Still have a shelf. You still have a shelf of action figures and stuff.
I do. Yeah.
I was waiting for it to be on screen, but it's not.
Well, there we go. Hey guys, there's Black Panther. But yeah, it's great that it's come around, and there's such quality behind it, and it seems to have such great direction. And I saw the spreadsheet that someone put online the other day that Marvel is putting out new content every single week of this year. Like they have something new coming out every week of the year. Like WandaVision happens, and then there's going to be a making of WandaVision, and then Falcon and Winter Soldier starts. Then at the week after that ends, they do a little making of, and then I think Black Widow is supposed to come out. And then after that, there's the Loki show, and like it just goes through the end of the year. Every single week there's something, and it's like, as the kids say, we're eating well.
They're on it.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't know. Like I love WandaVision, I love the MCU, but I don't think anything on Disney Plus will get me excited until we have a Mandalorian new season. But that's just me.
I was a little disappointed at the end. Like it was great. I loved the last episode, but the more and more that I think about it, and the more and more that I watch it, I am bothered by the uncanny valley that was Luke Skywalker's face. I just cannot get past him trying to talk. It just bothers me more and more. And I really wanted that show to sort of be apart from the Skywalker saga. I wanted it to go in its own sort of direction and not be so connected to everything that's already happened. You know, I wanted
I think they only did that as that last morsel. But for me, I think it was a little bit artistically intentional, your disappointment. To me, it almost felt like they wanted us to leave sort of hurt at the show or something. I don't know. I can't explain it. Like, I was pretty devastated by the ending in good and bad ways.
I mean, they've spent 2 years establishing this relationship between,
it was heartbreaking.
These two characters. And then, I guess he's just going to go with Luke now.
I actually cried. I first of all, that's not saying much because I cry at everything. Boys do cry. I am a crier, and I lost it at the end, knowing that they were going to be, because you do realize that they love each other. But I almost think the ending wanted us to want to be dissatisfied a little bit. Like, it felt, it wasn't satisfying. You know, it felt like it was a cliffhanger emotionally in that sense.
Because I feel like in every other way, they've been hitting it out of the park. Like Taika Waititi and Favreau and Dave Filoni, they have done nothing wrong. Like, they've just been...
Well, and that's what I mean. It doesn't feel accidental that it was sort of like, what? At the end. And then to kind of intentionally leave us hanging because they're producing something. They're producing something else. I forget what they're doing right now.
They have a lot of other shows coming out.
But they have other things. And I think they're kind of making us wait, you know? So it feels a little intentional.
Speaking of Disney Plus, as of this recording, they just released the entirety of The Muppet Show from the 70s. And Sarah and I were so excited. Like, we started watching them. And it brought me right back, man. And there's this weird thing that happens in the second episode. Prior to the episode starting, there's this big announcement on the screen that says, there are some insensitive jokes that happen in this episode. We considered cutting them out, but we wanted to leave them in to give viewers the entire context of what was happening at the time. They were wrong then, they're wrong now, this kind of thing. So we're like, oh my God, where's the racism? I don't even know what this is going to be. And so we were watching, and it ended up being like a Native American sort of joke at the expense of Native Americans. So it was very interesting to see that they left that in there, and they're going that route. But yeah, Muppet Show.
That is interesting, and that is a discussion, because it's like, do you wash out the mistakes of the past, or do you bring light to it and say, like, this is a learnable moment? That's interesting.
Yeah, I think they had they not put that disclaimer in ahead of time, it could have been like, oh God, this did not hold up well. But because they put that disclaimer in there, it's like, oh, well, now we can kind of talk about this, and see
that's interesting.
How we've changed.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, it's funny because, see, this is the problem. We can go on and on about things. I actually was asking you, my intention in asking you, about WandaVision, of course, about WandaVision, but I also just think it's awesome that, you have found a sort of space for yourself in the keto community that isn't just keto. You actually mentioned that yourself earlier. And I think it's cool because there's so much, like, everything keto. Like, if we're in this keto space, we are like keto obsessed. Everything is keto. Everything is diet and fitness. And then you put out, like, very thoughtful content around health and nutrition. And then the next episode will be, about comic books or something, which is so
it's
cool.
Not all, and you know what? A big part of it is for me is that, I mean, I don't have a ton of real life friends. So like finding this community, I found real life friends. Like, there are so many people. I mean, you included. I think that this space has become so special to me, not just because it changed my health and it changed, my entire existence as far as my relationship with food. But I found people that I love, and I found people that I love to spend time with, both online and in real life. Hopefully again at some point. But yeah, it's really important to me to have that in my life, and to not only, it's not just about, the dogma of keto and like, I got to put out keto content or else what's the point?
Right.
But it's like, I'm putting out stuff that's me, like Gormy and I talk about, WandaVision.
And if people want to like it, they can swipe by. It's fine.
No one is required to watch. It's like, it's fine,
Right.
We kind of do it for us.
I want to touch on something you just said, because I feel pretty strongly about this. There's actually, I don't want to put a number on it, but several people in my life that, like, we've taken an online friendship and made it very real. I know their families, I know their kids. Like, there's people from the keto space that I met through Instagram or whatever that are now like my best friends. And do you think that's something unique to keto? Because I don't know if I really see other people making lifelong friendships off of Instagram.
Yeah,
at this
I think
frequency.
I saw a meme where, and I don't remember what the account was, but it was like real life meetups or something like that. It was a compilation of people who had only known each other online, like meeting in airports and like running at each other and embracing each other. It's like, oh, that's really sweet.
Yeah, I had a
But
moment like that once in New York.
Yeah, I don't know that it's specific to keto. It seems like it happens a lot more here than I see in other sort of spaces. And I think it's just because, we're all sort of on the same journey. Like, I remember talking to my buddy Michael, Fat Dad Keto, and he was like, this whole thing started out as just a bunch of fat people wanting to get less fat. But it quickly became, way more than that. And it's not just about the weight either. Like, I just posted a video the other day, sort of more off the cuff than I normally ever put out. But my mom recently got her A1C down into the normal range, like after a couple decades of it being really, really high. And just celebrating her and like her coach, Samantha, who's become one of my dearest friends. That's
you
something
call her
that
SS, Samantha.
The double S. So, I mean, that kind of thing, I don't know that happens a whole lot outside of keto.
Yeah,
and I think
I'm sure it happens, but
it
does seem like if it happens, it's probably like people think it's weird or something. It is not weird in the keto space. I think, so you hit on something, you're making me think that that's true. I think that there's for many of us, a relatability that and again, I've talked about this in other episodes, but there's a lot of emotion. There's a lot of pain behind being heavy. There's a lot of emotion and pain and victory out of losing weight successfully. There's certain things about being on a journey like this that create connectivity, I guess, like an unspoken understanding. I don't know. It does feel somewhat unique to keto. Like, I don't see a lot of like plant-based people like, becoming best friends or, I don't know, I just, maybe because I'm not in it, maybe that happens every day. I don't know. I don't know if it even happens as much today as it used to. Like we're kind of old in the keto space. I'm like middle-aged, because there's people like we were saying, like Megan might have been in this for 6 years, 7 years. I'm 2.5, 3 years in. I don't know. I have seen a cultural shift in the keto Instagram universe. There does feel like some cultural shifts have happened there as it's gotten bigger. And I don't know if it's maybe some of us who established relationships early on where we were sort of like the pioneers, like when everybody was talking shit about keto, we were there holding each other accountable. But I think you're right about the health journey part of it.
I think there's a couple things going on. I think that there's a camaraderie that comes with trying to better yourself through whatever it is you're doing, and I think that's present in a lot of I think almost everyone in this space. But I also think that how do I want to put this? You kind of have to be willing to reject the masses. This is a way of eating that is sort of seems crazy to the layperson, and it's sort of like we're doing this weird thing together that is not, when I started at least, wasn't as popular as it is or it has become. But I think there's a certain type of person that sort of is willing to sort of buck convention and sort of do something that's not really accepted and have success that way. I think that definitely creates strong ties.
Yeah, that's interesting. We're kind of like the band nerds in high school, We're stick together.
For sure.
And I was a band nerd, so I'm not talking shit. I was a marching band and
was a total band nerd. What did you play? What did you play?
French horn. And I was the drum major of the marching band. Nice. I was a drum major.
Shout out to brass. I did trombone and tuba. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in marching band, it was the flugelhorn instead of the French horn. But now we're really nerding out.
Yeah.
I loved marching band, by the way. It
Hmm.
was one of the best experiences of high school for me.
Yeah, I loved it too.
As was the drama club. Amazing. Just like that was
See,
a
we were
big
too
part of my
small to
life.
have a drama club, man. How big was this school? How many kids
Oh,
did you graduate with?
oh, I think it was like 600 or something. We had a
Hmm.
big high school, like 2,200 kids or something. It was a big public school in the DC area, in Maryland, in the DC area. And like all the high schools are huge and we have big football games and it was like a whole thing.
I don't know if I've told you
Um,
about this, but I grew up very, very northern New York, like right on the Canadian border on the St. Lawrence
mhm.
River. And my school was K through 12 in one building. I graduated with 30 kids. And so that led to, like, if you were interested in something, like you want to play basketball? Okay, starting center. You want to play soccer? All right, you're a front line. Yeah, it was like they needed, I told Frank this
so
in the
you were the
conversation we
best
had.
trombonist in the school by default.
Basically, yeah, there's no competition for first trombone. It was like, if you're
It's funny.
interested, we need bodies to get in there. Yeah, it was, and so I liked that. I feel like I did miss out on a lot of, and I mean, there were pros and cons. Like everyone knew everything about each other, which
Mhm.
is good, but also kind of a pain. There was no getting away from anyone knowing about
Sure.
you. But I did get to try a lot of things, and I got to do a lot of things. And then I remember when I went to college at like just a normal sized SUNY school, like in Cortland, thinking it was like this magical, huge place. Um, and come to find out after, you know, it's not. It's a very
Right.
small school, but
It's
you
probably
know,
the size of my high school, like a
yeah,
few thousand.
exactly. Yeah, it kind
Yeah.
of was. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So your school wasn't big enough for drama, but they had marching band.
That marching band. Yeah, they had marching.
Well,
There were a lot of music nerds per capita. There was concert band, there was marching band, there was chorus.
interesting.
Yeah.
No, we were definitely kind of like the outcasts, which I guess is the word. Like the keto is an outcast community, I guess is your point.
Yeah.
But we were definitely the outcasts in school, and not in a bad way per se, but we like stuck together. We all ate lunch together in the band room, not in
Hmm.
the cafeteria. Like with everybody, it
Right.
was like very much like this little tight knit little family because we've all been through this thing together that we call marching band training and all that. But back to keto, yeah, it
Yeah.
is kind of an outcast thing. I guess none of what we're saying is wrong, right? It's all of it. It's a kind of a
Yeah.
unique swirl of community that happens when it is kind of like a bunch of people who've decided to like want to make a change on
Yeah.
themselves or a change for the better. That being said, like I do feel like and they're not against each other, but there's two sort of wings of keto. There's sort of the um fitness, athletics, weightlifting side of keto,
Hmm.
and then the fat kids that you
Oh,
said, which sound, I don't even like saying that, but the weight loss side, right?
right.
And they're together, like it's all part of it. But um, I have felt more personal connections with other people who have gone through a similar journey to
Oh, for
me,
sure.
which has landed me more on the weight loss side. But I have made some very real friendships, many of which have become very real life as well. And like,
Hmm.
even if I wasn't keto or wasn't on Instagram, I would still have those people in my life. There's also people that I've never met in real life that I feel genuinely connected to, or like
Absolutely. I have so many of those,
yeah,
especially
it's
since like
bizarre.
2020 being sort of like we punted the year basically, and it's looking like, I don't know. I don't know that 2021 is going to be loads better, as far as like in real life meetups go.
No, yeah, no, it's not gonna be much
I'm
better.
so it's killing me that I haven't seen these people and or haven't ever met some of these people.
Right.
I can't wait for the next time when that happens, because it was that 2019 KetoCon was something else. It was life changing,
Yeah, but that had a, I don't know what the right word is here. That had a zeitgeist to, like that, like there will never be that again in that
Right.
sense, nor should we try to create that again. Like
Hmm.
there was a timing to that moment. It was sort of like at the peak of keto finally going mainstream and finally having a place to kind of, for everybody to realize these connections that we had been talking about for so long. Like that, I remember that year was just a big year for keto.
Yeah.
And like I said, and this isn't a good or a bad thing necessarily, but I have observed anecdotally a sort of cultural shift a little bit around keto as it's become more popular, as it's become more mainstream, as we have a lot more big companies coming in and marketing keto meals and keto products. It was a very niche market. I keep thinking back about this word outcast. It did feel like that for a long time. And now you still get naysayers. I mean, it's still kind of taboo in the mainstream, but almost in an intriguing way, the taboo around keto. Like not everyone agrees with it, but it's not seen as like this.
I'm way less defensive about it. I'm way less prone to sort of like feel like I need to defend things than I used to be.
Yeah, 100%.
You know, I think that it's come to the point where it used to be that I had to defend like what I was doing to everyone. Yeah, a lot. Yeah, I think there's still people who don't think it's a great idea, but the idea that we're all going to drop dead from the fat we're eating does seem to have subsided a little bit. You know, I think people are really seeing it's an effective tool. There's enough data, at least unofficial data. I still think the medical community needs to catch up. Absolutely.
Big time. But, you know, we're thriving. My lab work is amazing, you know, 2-3 years, you know, it's like, so let's talk about that. So that was a perfect segue in here. We've danced around the topic. But I really appreciate the content you've created around a specific topic involving health in this space. And you probably know the magical word that I'm going to drop here, cholesterol. This is a hot and heavy topic in and around the keto space. My cholesterol has not gone up, thankfully. My fiance stopped doing keto because it did. Now, there's a lot of controversy around this. I have been studying, and by studying, I mean at YouTube University, the misconceptions.
You have a degree from there too? That's where I got my degree.
I do. I have several. Yeah. You know, the demonization of cholesterol in general. I recently discovered David Diamond's video about the demonization of cholesterol. And he also in this video dives into the misuse and overuse of these ineffective pharmaceuticals to treat cholesterol as this blanket thing that we should all just bring down. You have shared your journey, your cholesterol journey, shall we say.
Yeah.
Give us a little rundown here.
Sure.
You've done a couple videos about it. You've shared your cholesterol being high. You've shared a follow-up. Tell us your journey with cholesterol, and then I would love to hear your thoughts on this topic.
Sure. Well, cholesterol was sort of the thing that gave me the most pause when I was like considering starting keto. It was like my cholesterol is already high, and I'm seeing some stories about, you know, people's cholesterol going crazy when they start keto. But I was like, you know, I'm 280 pounds right now, and I'm going to give it a shot and see how it goes. Cholesterol be damned for the moment. Let's just see.
Yeah, at least if you lose some weight, it's got to do something. Right. Sure.
That was the thing. And so I did that, spent, 10 months losing weight. My cholesterol skyrocketed. I started out keto. Before keto, my doctor had put me on a statin medication because my cholesterol had always been high. I think my cholesterol prior to starting those medications was close to 300 total. So my primary care physician was like, that's really high. We need to get that down. And I, of course, didn't ask why. I just said, okay, I don't want to die, so I'm going to listen to what my doctor says. I'm going to take these statins. And so I took them, and, I did not feel well, but I just sort of chalked it up to getting older. I chalked up the aches and pains and the foggy headedness that I was experiencing to getting older. I was in early to mid 40s. Like, this is just creaky joints and stuff. That's what happens when you get older. And I didn't really put two and two together that it was like side effects from the statins I was taking. So the day that I decided to start keto is the same day that I stopped taking my statin medications. I was like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
go, I'm going to cut them out. I'm going to start eating keto and see how it goes. And I always
You
hear
were
people
your
talk.
own lab rat.
I was doing experiments on myself, but I always
Yeah, yeah.
hear people talk about how great they feel when they went on keto. And I think I had a double whammy. I think it was like both cutting out the foods that were causing so much inflammation and going off the statins was like, I remember waking up one morning, not being hungry and feeling like $1,000,000, like just feeling like I could do anything. I had so much energy. I was bouncing off the walls, just wanting to do stuff around the house. And so I was like, this keto thing is legit. Like, I'm going to keep doing this. And I went to see my doctor a few months after starting, telling him that I had stopped taking the medication. And I am what you call a lean mass hyperresponder. My cholesterol went from on the medications, it was like, I don't know, a total cholesterol was maybe 200,
Okay.
kind of low HDL and pretty high LDL. And then when I went in to see him, it was like the 350 total, close to 300 uh, LDL. My HDL had climbed and my triglycerides had lowered. And I had done some research. I had listened to and investigated the work of Dave Feldman, who I think is an incredible N equals one experimenter. He had this theory that I was fascinated by, and it was basically this inverse correlation between the amount of fat you eat and the amount of cholesterol in your bloodstream. And when you think about it as a layperson, you think, well, if you eat a ton of fat, your cholesterol is going to go through the roof. And
Right.
what he found, he had pricked himself with a needle so many times to get this data, but he basically gave himself, he kept track of the amount of fat he ate. He gave himself a blood draw every day. And the lines for the fat he ate and his cholesterol, uh, if you flipped them, were basically in sync. So there was an inverse correlation between the amount of fat he was eating
So
and
as fat
his
went up,
cholesterol.
cholesterol went down?
Correct. Yes. And this kind of blew my mind. I was like, this cannot be true. What is going on here?
It's counter to everything we're taught.
Everything we're ever taught is like fat
Right.
is going to raise your cholesterol. But in the absence of carbs, that's not the case. I think carbs and fat together is obviously a nightmare. Like, that's the standard American diet. That's why we're all facing an obesity epidemic. That's why people are as unhealthy as they've ever been, is because they eat carbs, they eat fat. You got to pick a lane, kind of. It's one or the
Right.
other. You can have success in a high carb, low fat situation. You can have success in a high fat, low carb situation, but high fat,
Right.
high carb is not so great. So I tried this experiment for myself, and I didn't really have any initial blood work to base things upon. Like, Dave Feldman took like 30 days worth of data. I was able to track it all. I hadn't had my blood work done in a while, so I just started eating a ton of fat. And I was going to have blood work done at the end of the week. So I just ate all the fat I could. Like, I had an entire plate full of pork belly with all the fat that came out of it, just went nuts. I think like one of the days I averaged like 5,200 calories or something like that. Um, and of course, I gained some weight. I was like, I know I'm going to go up on the scale a little bit here. But I went in to have my blood drawn, and I didn't see a huge dip in the prior numbers. And I don't know if that's because maybe the prior numbers were even higher than they had been, or if I was just um,
Sure.
something else was going on. And I reached out to Dave on Twitter, and I was like, "What do you make of this?" And he's like, "Well, are you athletic? Do you do a lot of exercising?" I was like, "Well, yeah, I run quite a bit, and I was an athlete in high school." And he was like, "I have a theory about it's called lean mass hyperresponder, and it's basically people in sort of it's a low percentage of people, but some of them experience a huge jump up in their cholesterol when they start keto, which is what was happening with me. But
Hmm.
he also talked about this thing called the triad of markers that you want to look for when you're getting your blood drawn. Normally, you go to the doctor, you get your blood drawn, here's your total cholesterol, here's your HDL, here's your LDL, and that's kind of it. Maybe your triglycerides as well.
Right.
he talked about this thing called a nuclear magnetic resonance test, which gives way more information. And I
It's
asked for
like the
one.
size of the cells and all these other things.
Yep, it's the size of the
Yeah.
particles, it's the consistency of the particles, and that's really the most important thing. If you have large, fluffy, buoyant particles, that's what you want. You want them bouncing around, not adhering to the
Not
arteries.
sticky.
If
Yeah.
you have the small, dense particles, the very low density particles, I'm sorry, high density particles that are sticking to the walls, especially if you have inflammation, that's not good. So, um, so I got one of those NMR tests, and my particles were predominantly the large, fluffy kind. And he's like, well, there's a triad of markers that people should look for. If you have high LDL, but if you also have high HDL and low triglycerides, that is sort of a very good sign that you're in doing well as far as your blood work goes. Keto reduces inflammation, and the reason people demonize LDL and cholesterol is because with that inflammation is what causes this calcification of your arteries, and it closes
Right.
the size of the hose. Can create little stop gaps where if you get enough of those particles going through that are sticking to that wall, it can cause a cardiac incident. But having a low inflammatory diet like keto, where that's not the case, LDL is basically just taking energy where it needs to go. Like, that's another thing that I learned from him, is that LDL is not the boogeyman. LDL
Right.
is basically energy. Like, that's energy going around your body. And when you are a fat adapted person and you're using fat as your primary source of energy, it makes sense that your LDL is going to be higher.
Sure.
So I went from being terrified of my cholesterol before starting keto to almost never thinking about it now. It's not something that I really ever think about.
Hmm.
My LDL is very high. I think the last test I had, it was over 400 total. But my HDL was close to, I think it was in the 80s, very, very high. And my triglycerides were as low as they'd ever been. So I'm no longer really afraid of my cholesterol. I'm not afraid of dying of a heart attack, despite what every medical professional in my life has told me is
Right.
going to happen. Regardless of,
Right.
yeah, I lost 80 pounds, but your cholesterol is still super high. We want to get you back on a statin. Every time I go to the
Right.
doctor, I have to politely decline and say, I think I'm going to stick with
Right.
what I've been doing.
Which, by the way, statins have been proven to do nothing, but that's
Right.
that's
Yeah.
a whole other discussion.
Apart from those really terrible side effects that I experienced, yeah, they don't do
Yeah,
much.
yeah. That's fascinating. And it's called the NMR test. Is that right? You want
Yes.
to ask your doctor, because please.
Nuclear magnetic resonance test. And it
Yeah,
basically,
yeah.
the first time I did it, it was free. My insurance covered it. Every time since, it's been $50 out of pocket, which I'm more than happy to pay for.
It's cheap. Yeah.
It's so cheap and worth it. And it put my mind at ease.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and this really goes beyond just cholesterol, but there is a oversimplification of how a lot of our kind of nutritional metrics are discussed.
Hmm.
And cholesterol is one of them. But I actually heard Ryan Lowry talking, I think it was yesterday, about how it's sort of like what you were saying with cholesterol. With cholesterol, fat in a ketogenic diet is not the same thing as fat when mixed with carbs.
Exactly.
I believe for high blood pressure, it's the same thing with fat and salt.
Hmm.
Salt is not a problem when you're on a ketogenic diet, but
Yeah.
salt, when mixed with a high fat, high carb diet, does become problematic. And so the way that all of this body chemistry and metabolic chemistry is like kind of predefined in this one size fits all model of like,
Right.
just keep your cholesterol low, keep your blood pressure low, reduce
Eat a
your
low fat
salts.
diet. Yeah.
Yeah, eat a low fat diet, pack yourself with bread and carbs.
Yeah. Complex carbohydrates. They're
Yeah,
healthy
yeah.
for you. Eat your wheat bread,
it's
kids.
just it's amazingly out of date. It's just
That's why I
it's
was so disappointed
shocking.
about the guidelines that recently. I was really hopeful that there would be more
It's
progress
not.
on,
Yeah,
and we're just still kind of in the same sort of like low fat thing we've always been in.
it's still kind of the same because it's amazingly good for our economy or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, one more thing
Yeah.
before we move on from the blood work stuff. if people the NMR was a big one to get. But because my doctor was so confused by my results, like the weight loss coupled with the high cholesterol, he sent me to a cardiologist to get the granddaddy of all tests. It's called a calcium scoring test. And it's just like a little half MRI. They put you in a tube up to your waist and they just scan you like an MRI, but it measures actual calcification of your arteries, not just a marker. Like your cholesterol doesn't tell you what's going on in your arteries, really. This calcium scoring test will actually measure the amount of calcium in your arteries, and
it's quite definitive, actually. Sounding.
It is. It's an actual measure of the thing that it's looking for, and the closer you can get to zero, the better. And I think I had a non-zero score. I had a 14. But it's very, very low on the scale of calcification, which can go up to like 1,000 or whatever. But calcium scoring test and NMR.
NMR is sort of the first soiree into diving in deeper, and then that calcium score. So do you have any, I think I mentioned David Diamond. Who can people, are there any videos or resources that you think people should be checking out? Because I know this is an important topic. And even though neither of us are medical professionals, we're not giving out medical advice, but we are telling our stories and sharing some of the resources that we've discovered. So do you have anything that might be helpful for somebody to dive into this before they go to their doctor?
I always point people to 3 people in particular. The first, Dave Feldman, I've already talked about. His website is cholesterolcode.com. He's got an embarrassment of riches as far as information about cholesterol over there. He's also done a lot of podcasts with Ivor Cummins, who also has extensive knowledge on the subject. And then Dr. Ken Berry has several videos about cholesterol, including why it's not a bad thing that your cholesterol goes up when you start keto. Those are the big 3 that I always point people to. That David Diamond video is also really good. I want to say Nadir Ali has one that's similar to that. If you just look up keto doctor cholesterol, like you're going to find some
a lot. Dr. Berg
there.
has some stuff too. There's a bunch of stuff out there.
Yep.
I like Ken Berry's stuff a lot. That's awesome. It's an important topic, and I like that you have not only talked about it, but you actually show your data, which I think is really cool. If you go to your YouTube channel, High Fat High Fun.
That's it.
Which is really appropriate for the conversation. You do outline search for high fat, high fun cholesterol, and you'll probably find a few videos that are pretty cool to see because you actually drop in shots of some of your results, which I think is awesome.
Yeah, there's one that I did back in 2017, which is actually the most popular video on my channel, like by far. And then I just did an update a little while ago, like a few months ago. About where things are now. So there's two cholesterol videos on my channel. I should do more. Like they're good.
And this is a hot topic because it's very important to keto and non-keto folks because of the kind of controversy around it. I know a lot of keto people who've run away scared when their cholesterol went up, and that's fine. Like I'm not here to preach keto or to tell that you shouldn't listen to your doctor, or that, we have to find what works. And not every body is going to thrive on a ketogenic lifestyle. Ours seems to, but not everybody's is going to. That being said, if it's purely an issue of cholesterol, there is more data that you can find to kind of quantify this discussion for yourself. And it sounds like you've really done a good job at doing that and being smart.
And I'm not one to wear a tinfoil hat, but I will just say that the statin medications that I was on, the ones that doctors always prescribe to people with high cholesterol, are the most prescribed and the most lucrative drug in the history of prescription drugs. So there's incentive for prescribing them. It's a whole thing.
I had to just take a deep breath because the discussion I find deeply bothersome, to say the least.
Yeah.
It's a very heavy topic. The scale of the misinformation around health, and this isn't just a cholesterol thing, the demonization of fat in general, the demonization of keto as a lifestyle it's frustrating, and it opens up a much bigger discussion. But I think when it comes to cholesterol, even though there are these these doctors and really studied minds that have put out data about this, I think it's been really cool to see you share your personal path on this as well. I think it's more relatable to a certain degree.
That's the thing. I of course, am not a doctor, and I go out of my way to say that I'm not, but I think that there's a lot to be said for people who share their personal experiences with,
Yeah.
as it pertains to the cholesterol. I
Yeah.
think there's something to be gained there, even if it's not, ironclad medical evidence of anything. Look what this dude did. This is his story, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Aaron, I can't tell you how much fun this is. We could do this for hours.
I love talking to you, my friend.
Maybe you'll be my first two-time guest. So stay in touch. We
Nice.
always have a great time.
Of course.
I really appreciate your time today. Before we wrap up, I don't remember the exact language that you used when you asked me this last question, but I'm going to ask it to you. Give us a TV show we should all be watching right now that maybe I haven't heard of yet.
Okay.
Because you are awesome with pop culture. So
well, I appreciate that, sir. I'm not going to say Jeopardy, which is the thing I watch every night, especially now that Ken Jennings is gone. He's done with his little run of being the host of Jeopardy.
I know.
It's a show that Sarah and I watch every night. And I'm excited to see some of these other guest hosts, but I really want Ken to come back on a permanent basis.
He's so good. Yeah, he's so good.
The show that we just started watching, like a few nights ago, it's it's okay. It's not one of my favorites so far, but it is very entertaining. It's called Resident Alien. It's got Alan Tudyk from Firefly fame as the central character who plays this alien who crashes on Earth and only in a small Colorado town. And there's a biological anomaly that's present in 1 out of every 1 million people on the planet Earth who would be able to see him in his alien form. And one little kid in this podunk town is that kid. And you can see him as his alien form. It's entertaining. Alan Tudyk, I would watch anything with that guy in it. He's very good. So we've been really enjoying the first few episodes of that. As far as other stuff,
platform
it's on Sci-Fi, SYFY, which is weird.
Yeah.
But we've been watching it on our Apple TV. There's an app. I think it's done maybe already. We're a little late to the party on it. It might be all over by now. But we've been watching that. That's really the only big thing, apart from, the nightly trivia half hour.
Also, side note, I'll confess, sci-fi also kind of annoys me because neither science or fiction has a Y in it.
I know. The whole rebrand was odd.
Very odd. I haven't found something other than WandaVision in the last maybe month or so that's just like really fired up the engines for me.
Yeah.
A lot of people really loving Bridgerton and a few things like that on
Let me
Netflix.
ask you,
it was good. It was good.
Think Bridgerton is appropriate for a 15-year-old?
Yes.
Okay. Our daughter's watching by herself. I think that, like, okay, we've heard some stuff.
Yeah, no, I do. I think that depends on your 15-year-old.
She's very mature. Yeah.
Yeah. And then your household, like,
yeah.
Some of my friends who are parents have like these very sex positive and very open households. Others are much more, reserved in that regard.
Yeah.
So I guess that would really depend on the household. But I think there's much worse on television that she already has seen or has access to than Bridgerton. Absolutely. So I say go for it. But
That's
no, it was good. It was good. But I'm looking for something that like really blows my mind. And I haven't found a ton of that the last month or so. And maybe that's just because in 2020 we watched so much TV.
Yeah. I'm very excited about this whole year as far as the Marvel stuff goes. Like, I love that it's weekly and they're not blasting it out a la Netflix. It just makes for so much more enjoyable interim, week to week, where you read all the theories and the discussions and what the heck is happening here. Yeah.
I think Disney Plus is doing some great things in general.
Yeah. Agreed.
You know what I just watched that blew my mind? I'm late to the game, but I just watched Soul on Disney Plus.
Yeah, we like that one.
Oh my God, so good. Yeah. I loved that one.
Yeah,
I thought really that was amazing. So Aaron, where can our friends find you? I'd love for you to share where our friends can find you. And then also if you have any fun projects coming up that you want to give us any details on.
Sure. I'm mostly active on Instagram. My handle there is adketo, a.d.keto. I'm also sometimes around on Twitter, which is, I couldn't get the same handle. It's _A_D_keto. And then
Doesn't that suck? I'm the same way.
it sucks.
It's
I
so
want that.
annoying.
Yeah. But you know, I've already destroyed my own sort of brand consistency across like my YouTube channel used to be
I know.
80 keto. I switched it to high fat, high fun. So youtube.com/high fat, high fun. And then, yeah, I'll tease this little PDF that I have coming out.
All right.
It's going to be a few more months, I think, before it's ready, but I've ramped up production on a little bit, doing a lot more writing, doing a lot more recipe testing, doing a lot more photography. The biggest part is going to be
Ooh.
the conceit of the thing is that it's going to be 20 recipes, each of which has their own standalone recipe video linked to via the PDF, unlisted, so it's exclusive to the PDF. And that's the thing that's
Sort
going
of
to
an
take up the rest of my time.
interactive ebook?
You'd call it an interactive ebook, but it's a PDF
cool.
with links. So that's the plan. Hoping that it's out by summertime.
I love it. I love it.
I'm very excited about it. Yeah.
I can imagine it's a big undertaking.
Well, I mean, coming from you, that I don't know what to take. I don't know quite how to take that. You put out my favorite cookbook of the past like few years recently, and like I'm nowhere near that. This is just me kind of tippy-toeing into the arena.
Thank
hopefully
you.
It goes well.
You should. I love what you guys cook, and I just love what you share. And your family is awesome. I feel like I haven't met your wife yet, but I feel like I have. So I really appreciate you. And thanks for your time today.
Of course. I'm so honored you had me on, Michael. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much. Yeah. Make sure you guys follow Aaron A.D. Keto, AD Keto on Instagram, and High Fat High Fun on YouTube. You will not regret it. I'll just say that. And since you brought it up, shameless plug. Get yourself a copy of my new cookbook.
Sitting right there?
I mean, it's always next to me. I know. Gosh, no, get yourself a copy of New Keto Cooking anywhere books are sold. Join me right after this for a bonus episode at patreon.com/Chef Michael, where I'm going to spill the tea on my thoughts on everything Aaron said today.
Nice.
I got lots of bad things to say about you.
Yes.
And guys, thank you so much for being here. Thanks to our sponsor, Redmond Salt, for supporting the podcast. Make sure you guys are using a high quality salt, and Redmond is definitely the way to go. Redmond.life. Use the discount code Chef Michael and you will get 50% off. I freaking love you guys. Thank you so much for being here. I will see you on the next episode. Bye.